All right, we're live. Good morning, Mellissa. How you doing?
I'm really good. How are you, Ian?
I'm excellent, and it's really nice to have someone to have a chat with this morning that isn't a martial arts or fitness expert. You're the mind expert. That's what we're going to call you this morning.
Yes, although for legal reasons, you must have a special interest in the mind rather than an expert.
Okay, yeah, all right. That makes sense. That goes with today's climate, with how we talk about all things. Could you just give us a quick introduction of yourself and some of the things that you do with your business, and then I want to pick your brain a little bit about the mind.
Awesome. So I'm a registered psychologist and I've been practicing for about 15 years, and I've had two main careers in that time. I started in the Army. I was in uniform, deployed overseas a whole bunch, did lots in that preventative mental health space. So even though you wouldn't really read about it in the news, you know, the Army does a lot to try and upskill soldiers to deal with stressful environments. It's just there's a limit to how much resilience helps when you're exposed to trauma. So I got out of the Army in 2012, and I've been working in the employee assistance program space, so EAP. It's workplaces pay for counselling and training for their employees. So doing a lot of workplace psychology. Again, in that preventative space, for the most part, going in to do training on mental health skills, resilience, responding to critical incidents, and then doing a little bit of individual counselling from a home office.
Awesome.
So at the moment, I'm doing lots of counselling because of COVID, a little bit of workplace training, but my passion is really about upskilling people so they've got right skills to deal with stress, because is inevitable. It's not really helpful to try and eliminate it, but we don't really have good systems in our society to teach people how do you regulate how you feel so that you can have big feelings and still get on with the course of your day.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I've really loved about having conversations with you. And we actually met through doing work with veterans and setting up some veteran programs. And during that time, I was actually paying quite a significant amount of money for some professional development. And when I was doing the courses with veterans that had post-traumatic stress, what I started to realize was that a lot of the rehab psychology and setting yourself up to be more resilient and have a better routine to your day was really similar to the performance coaching that I was doing on the other side of things. And it really kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Like, why are we waiting until we're broken to be doing these things and talking about these things? Because there is things that you can do. And what I realize with people now, trying to help people, is like I can have 1,000,001 great nutrition plans, I can have 1,000,001 great training programs, and whether I'm trying to help someone lose weight or teach them to win fights or be a champion, their attitude and their mindset is so important. So when people talk about mindset, what is a mindset, and what can people start to do to develop a strong mindset?
So it's a massive question. What is mindset? I think it comes down to your expectations of why things happen in your life. So if I was to drill it down to a nice, simple explanation, I think the most important aspect of mindset is whether you believe you've got control over your actions or other things are controlling you. So it's called locus of control, whether we believe that if we take appropriate action, it'll lead to the outcome we expect, And most people who are in a high performance environment believe that it's all about them. It's about the decisions you make. It's about the food you eat. It's the schedule you create. It's the effort you put in. It's the hard work. It's the blood, sweat and tears. And that gets you the outcome at the end. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who take no accountability for anything that happens in their life. So if something good happens, it's because of luck. And if something bad happens, it's because of other people, that everything's externalized. And so it's really hard to get someone with that external locus of control to see that, well, it comes down to you and your decisions. We've got this great nutrition plan, but someone with an external locus of control will say, well, I couldn't do it today because it was raining. I was stressed at work. I had to take care of the kids, so that's where you hear the excuses about why they can't do something. So I think the first step is really recognizing what's within your control and what decisions that you're making, even if you don't like the decisions.
I love that, because I think one of the best books I read in the last couple of years was the Jocko Willink Extreme Ownership book, and it's the most gifted book that I've ever had. I think I've given it away 9 or 10 times now. Just like, you need this, you need this, you need this. Yeah. I love the storytelling in that book as well, which is really good. For techniques for improving mindset, I know there's a bunch of different stuff out there. Some people use affirmations, some people use journaling and all these other things. I like to read books, listen to podcasts, and talk to people. So talking to mentors or people has always really helped me with my mindset and to stop me making poor decisions and move forward. Because it's hard to set up that network, right? Like, you can't be next to those high performers all the time, but sometimes a simple phone call to those people has really helped me. What are some of the techniques that you would suggest for people that know they have a bad attitude or know that it's their mind that's getting in the road? Because if there's one thing that I've noticed when I've talked to people about poor attitudes or shitty mindset, they just think they have to change their mind and they don't actually put in the work to changing their belief systems. So we need some more tools for that. Is there something that you could suggest?
So continuing on from your idea there around being around like-minded people or motivated people, I think our social network has a big impact on what we do. And a lot of that is unconscious. So I often talk to clients about joining a group like yours, a gym, where people are inspired and motivated. And so your mates are people who are going to the gym, and that's a normal thing that people do. So I think that choosing who you socialize with is an important factor in changing your mindset. And particularly for the veteran community, you see pockets of really sick veterans who sit and complain with each other. And how do you get better when your mate's saying, no, you don't need to work, mate? Like, here's this other compensation system, have you tried this one? Oh, did you know you can get a payout for tinnitus at the moment? Like, so when that's your social network, it's really hard to step out of that mindset because it's being reinforced by the people you socialize with.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons I cut away that network when I was looking to change my life, because that was the reason I got out of the military in the beginning was frustrations and complaining, and now it hasn't even ever crept back in my life, which is good. And I have some really high performing friends that we always talk about the 5 people that you hang around. Like, we're talking to each other on the phone even though we're hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from each other, because you really do become those people that you hang around. And if you really have struggling to do that, I think obviously the internet's a wonderful place now. People need to start unfollowing and and stop feeding their brain with all this filth on social media. It's like, if someone merely puts up a status that I scroll past and I'm like, oh, Janie complaining, unfollow, you don't have to put it in your brain. If you want that negativity and you want other people's opinions, turn on the news. You don't need to do it in your downtime. It's ridiculous that we think we need to be force-fed this with our eyeballs locked open all day long, because you really do become your thoughts.
Yeah. Very critical, I think. But there's another strategy that I've been using with clients around helping to build motivation, and it's called defensive pessimism. So it's something I took from a psychologist called Kelly McGonigal, and she's got a great 1-hour Google talk that you can watch on YouTube, and it goes through probably 6 or 7 different self-control interventions, and they're things like eat more vegetables, like sleep better, like it's practical stuff. But one of them is about planning where you fail. So say you want to increase the amount of exercise that you're doing, you're doing your normal goal setting around it, and then you're thinking about what are the likely barriers and obstacles that are going to pop up, and then what do I do to manage them in advance? And then her main tip is track your failures. Like, track successes, that's great, but it's more important to track your failures when motivation's an issue, because when you didn't go to the gym, why? What did you say to yourself? What were the obstacles? What could you say to yourself to overcome those barriers next time? And so when you look at why you fail, you learn better how to succeed.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because I used to tell people all the time, I don't do too much one-on-one nutrition coaching anymore because we have a few coaches at the gym, but I'm like, just be honest with me and tell me, because I want to know what time of the day your willpower is waning. I want to know where you are, what your environment is at the time, and I want to know all those things that are happening. And, for anyone out there that's fight prepping, you should be doing worst case scenario backwards. Even if you think you're going to smoke this guy, plan for the what ifs. He's more dangerous in that area than you thought, and go backwards. That is absolutely great advice. And I would really love a link. I'll get you to send me a link to that Google talk, and I'll share it on this post too.
Can you share documents as well? I've got a Word document that I use with clients for the defensive pessimism that people can just use to do their goal setting but track their failures.
Yeah, I can. Absolutely.
Awesome.
That'd be fantastic. So I know you and your husband are actually quite high performers yourselves, and you own a couple of businesses as well.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that, and how has being a psychologist, you think, helped you manage running more than one business at the one time and juggling all these things? Because sometimes whenever I talk to you and Tommy, I feel like you guys are balancing plates, you're moving around, you got
there's over here and running, spinning that plate,
and still finding time to travel all the time and enjoy life. So it's always fun to watch from the outside in. But what are your tips for balancing all these things? Because most people can't even think about owning one business or side hustle, but you guys are quite successful juggling a few.
So my first tip would be, before getting into business, learn about business. So I got out of the army, and Tommy's the ideas man. So he's got these beautiful, creative, big picture ideas, and I'm the leg man. Like, I get in there and I just put head down, bum up, and make it work. But when I got out of the army, he's like, well, if you build this clinic of psychologists, and then you can have this turnover, and here's the margin. And I knew nothing about business, but I rented 124 square meters of office space. I didn't have any referrals, like no clients, no staff. I remember sitting on the floor with the FPOS terminal, and that was the only bit of kit in the whole office. I'm like, okay, cool, I can make money now. I can receive money. I knew nothing about business, and it took a long time to learn that on the fly. And I had a lot of arguments with Tommy about he's suggesting do this thing, and I'm like, I'm too overwhelmed. I can't cope with a business development activity when I'm in it kind of like a hamster in a wheel. I mean, ultimately, if I had done a better analysis of the market, I would have realised how difficult it is to build a business model from counselling. Because, I mean, it's a terrible, terrible business model. If you do a good job, your customers don't come back. How do you make money when you don't get that kind of repeat customer kind of attendance? So it was helpful when I did a subject at uni on marketing management and understood that having a good business is not about having a good product necessarily, but it's about knowing the product that your customer base needs and being able to develop that for them. So a bit of knowledge about business, I think, is helpful, and I don't think it has to be a lot. But I didn't listen to any podcasts. I wasn't reading any books. You know, I didn't have any way of absorbing knowledge about business before getting into it.
Yeah.
But now that I'm in it, what I've learned is don't be a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
It's much better to do something than to sit on an idea until it's perfect. And just you learn by doing, and you learn from your failures. And we've had some epic failures in business, which gives us the courage to take bigger risks. So I think you can't be too tied to it's got to be done perfectly, and just be happy with the life lessons that come from giving it a go.
I love that, like progress over perfection. Like some people won't start training because they can't make every night. Oh no, I can't make every night. And it's like, well, just make 2 nights to begin with while you learn how to juggle your life and do that, and then do 3 nights. Like progress over perfection.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I started luckily filming videos for the gym and instructionals, maybe like November, December last year before COVID happened, and you just got to get in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And do it and put it out there, so you start to get over the fact that people are going to judge you, and people are going to, you know, like your instructionals aren't going to be as good as John Danaher's or all these other amazing coaches out there that put out instructionals that it's okay to be yourself and do it in your own way. And I think anxiety has somehow become a catchword in society that everyone has. And my question is always been to everybody that uses anxiety as like a reason as to why they can't do things is like, well, what are you doing about that anxiety right now? Like we need to really encourage people to get amongst it and actually do something for it, like an hour at the gym every day or whatever it is that they're going to do it. But yeah, it's paralyzing people to not take action on things. Is there anything advice you could give to someone out there that suffers a little bit of anxiety, that finds it paralyzing to either go to the gym or to take risks in their life?
So I think the major point is that you can't wait for the anxiety to disappear to be able to do it. And I think what the life lesson is figuring out that you can do things while also feeling anxious. So one of my big therapeutic orientations is not that we need to eliminate feeling bad. we need to learn how to experience it and still do what's important in life. And it comes from a very Buddhist kind of perspective around clean pain and dirty pain. So clean pain's inevitable in life, and in order to lead a rich and meaningful life, we need to accept the pain that inevitably goes along with that. And so in order to have stuff that's important to you, you're going to have big feelings when that stuff's impacted. And grief is probably the most common way we see it. You know, the degree to which you grieve for someone who's died is the amount of love you had for that person. Can't have one without the other. And if I want to reduce your grief, the only way I can do that is to change how much you love someone. And even if that's possible, it's probably not really helpful. And so there's pain is connected to values. You know, you're anxious because you want to create a good impression or you don't want to make mistakes. You know, they're things that are really helpful in other areas of your life, but they create anxiety when there's uncertainty in your environment. And so sometimes if we can go, well, I feel the anxiety because of this value I have, it can help you to tolerate the anxiety more rather than avoiding it. So dirty pain is what we work on in counselling, of how much we hate being in pain. Like we go, I shouldn't feel anxious, like this is shit, you know, and the people who get so upset because they feel anxious and, oh, it's stopping me from doing what's important. Is it? You know, so, but that's the stuff that we can reduce, you know, how much we dislike experiencing the pain or how much we avoid the pain. And the avoidance can be just as much as a problem. And it's not just physically avoiding stuff, but drug and alcohol use is a way of avoiding how you feel. So I don't think we need to get rid of anxiety. We just need to accept that it's part of your life and still choose to do what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. And it makes me kind of think of like anxiety almost being like a superpower too, you know, like that deer in the forest that's anxious about things, like that anxiety keeps them alive and on edge, you know, like, and some people use their fear as a superpower. Like, let's use GSP, for example. The guy had huge fear and anxiety backstage before every single fight. And I've definitely been backstage at a heap of fight shows and seen that fear and anxiety manifest in people throwing up before fights, shaking, you know, like all these interesting things where people think, oh, that guy fights MMA, he must be like super kind of like not scared of this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, well, you know what? And the tougher they get, the tougher the guys they fight. So you know, that never really leaves you. It's just how you deal with it, you know, which is actually one of the reasons why, you know, like I called it Courage Training Center, because the whole idea isn't that I get a whole heap of brave people in the center. It's that we want people to become brave and realize that they can do a lot more with themselves. So I think that's really good advice.
Bravery is not having fear. Bravery is having the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah. You know, I just talked about that with our kids' martial arts classes the other day, you know, like, what's courage? And they're like, oh, not being scared. And it's like, no, it's actually like being scared and doing it anyway, you know. And I just think these conversations are really important to have. Like, if we're going to demysticize mental health and mental performance and start talking about it more, we need to start having these types of conversations where we stop using it as excuses to not do things or not perform, you know. Like, you know, last time you had a cold and we worked through it, even though that's against the rules now. Don't go to work with a cold. But, you know, like, realistically, now people are going to get colds and your boss is going to be like, make sure you work from home. You know, like, the job's still got to get done. And it's the same when you're sick or your mental health isn't great. The job's still got to get done. Life still goes on. The earth doesn't stop spinning as much as we might feel like it needs to stop spinning for a little bit. I want to backtrack just a little bit before we go on, because we've covered so much stuff. Whenever I've done any professional development, you talked about overwhelm before, and I definitely get overwhelmed, you know, like a lot of the time. I know really well how to deal with it now. I'm really good at delegating and making sure that when I've got all these things on and big communities and classes that I still have to be happy for, and I still have to be able to rock up to the gym and lead and be in a good mood all the time, is that I know how to pull back and what's too much for me. What are some tips that you have for dealing with overwhelm? Because I know when stress hits us in our life, everyone knows that feeling where you're just like, fuck, I don't even know where to start. What are some of your tips for dealing with that?
So I think it starts upstream from feeling overwhelmed in having a good work-life balance, like having systems where you can switch off from work. And that's one of the issues we're facing at the moment, is that like there's so much overlap between home and work. It's really hard to find those barriers. And when we look at people who are in business, like when you're running your own business, you never switch off, right? Like, what time did you suggest to me for us to do this last week? 9 p.m.
I'm on the go from 6 to 9, but like I said, this is my life, and I don't know any different. So I actually don't count hours as a rule, because if I want to go have coffee or something with someone, I just go. If I want to take the kids out of school and go to things, so I manage that. I think, well, my wife might not, but I don't count hours. I wouldn't know the last time I did a 40-hour work. I wouldn't know.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily the issue, because it sounds like that you down tools and you go and do other things throughout the day. It's not like you're in work mode the entire time. Or if you tell me that you take downtime in this.
Yeah, my life is downtime.
Okay.
my whole job's downtime. I feel like it. I love what it is that I do, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed that way. There's only a small handful of jobs that I don't love doing, but they're very few and far between.
So you can love something, but it still is a demand. And one of the metaphors I use with my clients is each of the demands in our life are like revs on a car. Each demand puts the revs up. And if you're not able to bring the revs back down, you sit right on the red. And it only takes that little thing to push you over the edge. And you see that massive emotional response to something that's quite trivial in hindsight. I mean, that's I started crying once because there was no banana bread at Gloria Jean's. Like, I can't deal with life without the pear and raspberry bread. And what I couldn't say to the barista was Tommy was having spinal surgery. Like, it's never about the banana bread. It's about everything else that led up to it. So I think one of the key aspects to kind of dealing with that overwhelm is having systems where you bring the revs back down. Like what the things that you do on a regular basis that help you to discharge stress, because stress is not a bad thing, but that stress curve, the higher stress goes, the higher your performance goes until a certain point, and then your performance starts to drop off. And we don't necessarily want to avoid the stress. We just want to discharge the stress response. So having activities that are helpful when you're over the curve, when you're in the red zone. So for me, loving CrossFit at the moment, walking the dogs, and there's a bit by the lake where the dogs can go off lead, and it's just like this clarity. I've got good girlfriends who I talk to when I need to download. It's having systems of ways that you can actually bring those revs back down.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you do live in a wonderful part of the country there.
Magic.
Yeah, magic. It is magic. So you guys have ended up in a really good spot. Look, I mean, that was only 28 minutes today, but geez, there is some really good information in there. I'd really love to have you on again, Mel, and we'll pick your brain again. But I'm sure this video will be useful for people for a real long time. So I really appreciate you taking out time before you head to the gym this morning, having a chat to me.
Great. Thanks, Ian.